What's up, nerds? In today's video, we're going to be going over some kind of tips and tricks with JavaScript, how to properly enqueue your scripts, registering, deregistering, and localizing your scripts. All of these hopefully will kind of get you a better handle on your JavaScript inside of WordPress, and hopefully avoid some of the headaches that I had when I was first starting out with WordPress. So what we've got here is I've just got a blank WordPress site. Ignore the title of the site because that's for a future video. But we just kind of have a hello world here and then some of the JavaScript that WordPress puts in for us because we have get header and get footer. But we have three files in here, style.css and index.php, just to kind of get the theme up and running. And then on top of this, we have our functions.php, which is where we're going to be spending all of our time. So the kind of right way and wrong way to do this kind of involve using actions or not using actions. Index.php and the header.php may seem tempting to just throw in a script tag that has, your script source in here and blah, just throwing that out there is not a good idea. You don't want to hard code your JavaScript into your templates. And the reason why you might not want to do that is because, well, what if you have a plugin or a different part of your theme that needs to register or deregister that dynamically, meaning you want to get rid of it on certain pages so it doesn't load it unnecessarily or load it on very specific ones where it actually is needed. And so hard coding it is not going to be the way that you're going to want to do it. It just creates so many problems further down the road. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to throw it into WordPress's kind of ecosystem. And so what they have is you're going to need to attach this JavaScript file to an action. So look, we're going to have an action right here. So we're doing add action, and then we're going to do WP enqueue, if I could spell it. Enqueue scripts. That's the action we're going to be attaching to, and we're just going to put an anonymous function inside of here. And so there's going to be a couple functions that we're going to mess with inside of here. The first one that we're going to do is WP enqueue script, and that's going to have, as my autocomplete kind of shows us here, a couple different arguments. The first is going to be the handle, which is just an identifier of what this JavaScript file is going to be called. Now, this doesn't represent the name of the file, but just like a slug, an ID. So we're going to call this blah. Then there's going to be the source. So this is going to be the URI of the actual JavaScript file. And so typically what I like to do is I like to do get style sheet directory URI. And then you can kind of concatenate on the rest, because what this is going to do is that's going to get the URI to essentially this folder, wherever the style.css is. And so we're going to do /blah/blah.js. And so that's where our file is going to be. The next thing that we have here is any dependencies. That's an array. So if this script needed additional files to be enqueued before it can work, that's where you would put the JavaScript file names. So if we had another one called yo, just like we have right here with blah, if you had another one that it depended on called yo, that's where you would put that. And we'll do that in a minute. The version, just so you can kind of keep track of the version over time, it adds a little URL parameter to the end of it. So we'll show you that. So we're going to do 1.0. And then this last one is in footer. So this is whether or not it's going to put it in the header or in the footer. True if you want it in the footer, false if you want it in the header. So let's just put this in the footer. So now let's create that file. We're going to do blah/blah.js. Oh man, I really thought that was going to work. I thought I saw that somebody do that at one point, and I keep trying it, and it never works for me. New file, blah.js, and let's have a console.log, blah. So what we should expect here is when we refresh this page, we should now have a console.log that says blah, which we do. So that successfully got it onto our page, but let's take a look at some of the other pieces of it. So blah.js. So as you can kind of see right here down at the bottom left is the version. So that version 1.0 is what we saw here in our functions.php, this version. So let's say you make a couple changes to the JavaScript, and now this is 1.1. You refresh the page, now it's version 1.1. Why is that important? Because if you make those changes and your site is cached, you want that new JavaScript to be present on the page, and having that URL parameter will make the browser think that it's a different file, which technically it is. And then it will make sure to download that version 1.1 of that JavaScript file. So very handy and important there. So, and then also we're down here at the footer, not up here in the header. So good deal there as well. So this is just the most direct way to getting JavaScript onto your site. However, there's a couple other kind of tricks here that I want to show you alongside of this. So let's just get rid of that. The other one that I'm going to show you, another function, is the WP register script. And so this one also will get a handle. We're just going to call this yo, and we're going to copy, let's just copy the rest of this because we kind of already talked about it. So instead of blah, it's going to be yo and version 1.0. So let's have another file here. Let's call this yo.js, and we're going to console.log yo. So what you might be thinking is that, well, we've registered that script. We should be seeing a yo, just like we saw the blah here first. Did I forget? I forgot my semicolon. But we don't actually get anything. So what did this do? What this did, it is essentially registered the script with WordPress. So it said, hey, WordPress, we have a JavaScript file. Don't do anything with it, but it's there. So we can do things with it maybe a little bit later down the road. So when would you actually want to register it versus just, enqueuing it? Well, let's kind of take a look at this blah.js, and let's take a look at that empty array over here again. So what if we needed to make sure that anytime that we ran blah.js, it had to have yo there too? So like it's kind of making thinking, like say you had like a checkout.js and then you had like a cart.js or something like that, and you needed to make sure that if checkout was there, that the cart was enabled too. So what we can do is we can just use this handle right here and pass it to this array and say we want to make sure that yo is enqueued every time that blah is enqueued. So if we refresh this page, now all of a sudden we have yo and blah. So kind of a fun little thing. If you need to kind of like dynamically add or remove JavaScript files from your WordPress site, depending on what JavaScript file is enqueued, this would be the way to do that. And so those are two very handy little pieces of information there. So I highly also want to kind of like underline this part, is making sure that you do this inside of a WP enqueue scripts action. I took over a site for somebody at one point, and the way that the previous developer had done this was just like had gone down into here and just like pasted this into like the footer, which technically that works, but it also doesn't put it in the right place or anything like that, and it could lead to unforeseen consequences. Luckily, I didn't have too many problems with it, but I just instantly moved them to the right spot. And it even says on the documentation on WordPress, don't do it like that. So I'm just passing that along. So the next thing that we're going to take a look at here is deregistering scripts. So let's just say, kind of for example, you have this yo and it's registered, but you need to kind of make sure that it doesn't make it onto a certain page or something like that. Let's say on the home page that this shouldn't exist. And let's say you're working from the plugin, like you have a site that you're kind of working on from a plugin, and you need to make sure that this JavaScript just does not load on the home page. It's slowing things down. It doesn't even apply to the home page. I think let's just kind of pretend we're in plugin land. So plugin land. So what you would want to do is you would want to do add action WP enqueue scripts again. And let's do an anonymous function again. And there's a function called WP deregister script. And so we want to make sure that, and this will actually work with this too. So I actually want to show you with enqueue script. So let's say we didn't want blah there on the home page. And so let's go back down, and we don't want blah if it's home. So you just write a nice little conditional around it. And you just say, hey, if we're on the home page, don't have blah there. So let's refresh this and make sure that we're not getting any blahs on the page, which we don't. But let's just say only on the home page, deregister it. Or if it's not on the home page, deregister it. So this will work here on the homepage for us. So you can kind of see that you can kind of play with things that way and make sure that they are in the right places at the right time, even from like plugin land. So if this was just hard-coded and queued like right here with a script tag, you would have to kind of get a little bit creative with how you got rid of it. But yeah, this is just hands down kind of the better way to do this, because you can do things like this. The other thing that I wanted to show you is let's kind of pretend that we have some ajax going on inside of this blah.js, and we were, needed to like fetch something. And so usually what you would do, or like some sort of, you would have to have the admin ajax URL. So it would be, mysite.com/wp-admin-ajax.php, etc. Well, that gets a little bit tricky, because let's say you have, a local site, you have a staging site, you have a live site, and maybe you have like additional staging sites. So like you have, one for different branches in Git and stuff like that. Well, that URL is going to change quite a bit, because right here I'm on dynamic elementor controls.local. Well, that's not my live site. So am I supposed to come back in and change this before every deploy? How do I do that? So there is a good way to kind of dynamically get information into your JavaScript. And so we're just going to use console logs so we can just read it from the browser. But one thing that you can do is let's use yo actually, because it's registered. So what you need to do is you need to register this script, and then you need to do something called, it's another function called WP localize script. So I've got my notes over here. That's why I'm looking off into the distance, because the first time I recorded this, I messed up the syntax real hard and I embarrassed myself. So I've got my notes this time. WP localize script. And so this is going to have a handle. This is going to be what file you want to attach an object to. And then what you're going to do is then you'll have access to an object inside of that file that is going to have whatever information you want inside of that object. So we're going to use PHP to kind of generate a JavaScript object, and that JavaScript object is going to be available in our file. So what we have is we have our handle here, and that needs to be the yo, because that's the one where we want this file. So we're not creating a handle for this localized script function. We're inserting one that already exists. And then what we have here is an object name. So we're going to have a string. Let's call this admin ajax. And then this is going to be an array. Actually, let's not call this admin ajax. Let's just call this special, because you could want a lot of things in here, not just admin ajax. And then you're going to have an associative array of different things that you want inside of that object. So object syntax kind of thing. So let's just say ajax URL, and that's going to be equal to admin URL, or admin URL. And then it's going to be admin-ajax.php. Let's just have that in there for now. And then what we're going to want to do is then enqueue this script. So actually, since this one kind of enqueues it for us when we type in yo, so let's have that. And then, so inside of, I lost track of things. So yo is the one that wants to have the object. So here, let's console.log. What did we name this? We named this special. So let's console.log special, and then we'll have blah in here back. And we'll refresh this page. So what this should do is this should have an object ready for us. Oops. On line 8. Did I forget? Oh, I put in that semicolon there. That's no good. Oh, look at this. We have an object that just output, and it is our full URL to our admin-ajax.php. So we have special, and we named it special here. Let's just call this admin stuff, and then change this to admin stuff. We refresh that, we still have that. So what we can do is we can add even more things. Let's just say we wanted to have name is Alex. Refresh that. And now we have name is Alex in here. So you can kind of see how nice that would be to have inside of here. So you can have, fetch admin stuff dot, and then it's going to be, what did we name it? It was ajax URL dot ajax URL. And so that way you would never have to come back in here and re-enter in that URL over and over again. So if we do .ajax URL and console log that. So now we just have that URL in there, right there. So kind of fun. It kind of opens up a lot of different opportunities for you to do things that would have been kind of a headache in the past. So let's take a look in here. So this is kind of the thing that I wanted to, where it kind of like ends up at. This is a little peek behind the curtain, is it kind of just adds this right there to the document. And then this is essentially what's getting, you have access to in the JavaScript file. So anyway, that's a little peek behind the curtain. That's where it ends up, and that's why you can use it inside of here. But I hope you guys learned something. This was kind of stuff that I just kind of figured out over the years when I was first learning WordPress. And so hopefully this is helpful to you. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe. And also just a shout out to my patrons for supporting me. We did a couple of videos over the past couple months about deploying WordPress using Git. Also Gatsby and WordPress and kind of how those can work together. I'm going to be doing another exclusive video this month. Haven't quite decided on the topic yet, but we'll get there. So if you're interested in kind of those more advanced exclusive tutorials, there's a link to the Patreon down below. And as always, make sure to leave a comment. I read every single comment you guys leave. I got a small enough channel where I can do that. But I really appreciate all the support, guys, and I will see you in the next one.